How can I capture a fast-moving subject? Why do my images blur when I shoot in low light? How do I get a softer, milky effect in flowing water?
If you have all these queries and questions, this session will answer all of them. Welcome everyone to another session of Nikon DSLR tutorials. As we discussed in previous session about exposure and the elements of exposure, that is aperture, let's discuss another element of exposure which is called shutter speed. Now what is shutter speed? Shutter speed is mechanism to control light entering the image sensor of your camera. Now shutter speed basically controls the duration of light hitting the camera image sensor. Here you can see in this animation wherein the shutter is not open until and unless you press the shutter release button. Once you press the shutter release button, the light passes through the lens and hits the image sensor, and that's how the image gets recorded in your camera. Now in order to make you understand how shutter speed works in your camera, I have this Nikon D3200 camera. You just have to look here. As you can see just the mirror here because I have not pressed the shutter release button. Once I press the shutter release button, you will see the shutter goes up and you can see the image sensor. That means the light is hitting the image sensor directly. Moving ahead in exposure, shutter speed controls two elements. One, it controls light, and second, it controls the subject movement. To make you understand how shutter speed controls the exposure, let's see some of the examples. Now here is an image. As you can see, this image is pretty dark because it has been shot at 1/200th of a second shutter speed. Now this kind of shutter speed is quite high in the provided lighting situation. Now in this kind of lighting situation, let's see if we slow down the shutter speed to 1/20th of a second. Now this is the output you get at slow shutter speed. So we arrive at a conclusion wherein in low lighting situation you require to shoot at slow shutter speeds. Another example of how shutter speed controls exposure. Here you can see an image that is overexposed. Reason being, it has been shot at a very slow shutter speed. Now in this kind of shutter speed, the camera is exposed to light for a longer duration. Hence, you get overexposed output every time you shoot at in a very brightly lit situation. Now if we further increase the shutter speed to 1/500th of a second, you will see you will get a very balanced exposed image. Hence, we should use higher shutter speed in brightly lit situations. Coming to another role of shutter speed, that is controlling the subject movement. Here is an image that shows a high speed car. Now in order to freeze that kind of subject, you need to shoot at a very high shutter speed. Now this shot has been taken at 1/1200th of a second. So if you want to freeze the subject, you need to increase your shutter speed depending on the speed of the subject. If you shoot this subject at a slower shutter speed of say 1/40th of a second. Now when you shoot at such a slow shutter speed, you can actually show motion in your image. In order to do that, you need to slow down the shutter speed and follow the subject. Now how to identify slow and fast shutter speed? Shutter speed is normally denoted in seconds or fraction of a second. Now slow shutter speed means the shutter will open for a longer duration, that means more light will enter in the image sensor. Wherein the faster shutter speed means shutter will drop at a very high speed and less light will hit the image sensor. Here we have a chart that depicts various shutter speed starting from 30 seconds and going up to 1/4000th of a second. In certain high-end cameras, this shutter speed can even go up to 1/8000th of a second. Now if you see this scale, starting from 30 seconds till 1/60th of a second is what we technically consider as slow shutter speed. Slow shutter speed means more light, better in low lighting situation. Now starting from shutter speed 1 by 1/125th of a second and moving ahead to 1 by 4000th of a second is what we consider faster shutter speed. That means they are good in freezing the motion as well as in brightly lit situations. Now let's see with the help of some of the examples that what kind of shutter speed you should keep in what kind of situations. If you want to show those milky effect and motion effect on flowing water, you should shoot it at a slow shutter speed. Now moving ahead, if you are shooting your daily kind of activities like somebody walking, talking, sitting, in these kind of situation you should follow standard shutter speed ranging from 1 by 60th of a shutter speed to 1 by 1/125th of a second. Now if you are shooting something that is moving very fast, you have to pull your shutter speed at a high speed. Now in order to change the shutter speed in this camera, first go to S mode. Once you go to S mode, you have to rotate the command dial. As you keep on rotating the command dial, you will see the shutter speed is changing in the interface of the camera. As we have already discussed how to freeze the subject by increasing the shutter speed. Now in this example, we will tell you that how slower shutter speed are very useful in low lighting situation. Now this image has been shot at a very slow shutter speed. Hence, slow shutter speed are very good in low lighting situation. Here is another example of how you can show motion effect on waterfall or flowing water at a very slow shutter speed. So if you want to show any kind of motion, you have to shoot it in slower shutter speed. But always remember that when you are shooting in slower shutter speed, you have to stabilize your camera on a tripod or any kind of stabilizing surface. Otherwise, it might generate camera shake, which results in image blur. We thank you for watching this session of Nikon DSLR tutorial. In the next session, we will be talking about relationship between shutter speed and aperture. Until next time, this is your Nikon buddy Abhishek Singh signing off.